very much. Okay, it's 2 o'clock, 26th of April, 2021. It's the cabinet meeting, the remote cabinet meeting of the Vale Glamorgan Council. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and as I can see on screen, everybody is here. The next item is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I have somebody to approve the minutes, please?
I formally second, Dieter.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Good. Okay. Before I go into the references and the meetings, I will say what I normally say at this time, just to remind people we are still in a pandemic. What has disturbed me more than anything else is there's been too many DNAs did not arrive for the vaccination, and I urge everybody to take up the vaccination in order to protect themselves, their families, and indeed our community. So I will say no more than that. We're doing a great job so far in the vaccination, and everybody needs to play their part. Okay, I will carry on now with the reference. There's a reference here, a WellTag 2+ Dennis Powers Transport Study from Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of March. And I think, Peter, are you taking this, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'd start by saying that I have to say that I was disappointed that we failed to attract the Welsh Government funding, but they've subsequently announced their new pathway regarding road building and which is implementing their desire to move away from road building and move more towards the sorry about that.
Usually happens to me, and it probably will.
Yeah, at the same time. It's a timing thing. Sorry. Yes, where was I? Yes, their desire to take up the issue about climate change, and I don't think it's very easy for us to oppose that. But I was disappointed because the work, although it's become known as the Dinas Powys bypass, it was actually the Dinas Powys transport infrastructure study, and it embraced other works which are now not likely to go ahead. Anyway, we are where we are. The Scrutiny Committee has made 2 recommendations. The first one is noting the report, but the second one goes on asking that the Cabinet considers funding the public consultation. And I report to Cabinet that I did speak with my officers about doing that. But the experience of the most recent work we've done with public consultation, notably Junction 34 to A48, and under the coronavirus difficulties one thing or another, is it is incredibly time consuming of officers' time, and we estimate has cost us something in the order of £20,000. And quite frankly, I don't feel that I can come to you and say, will you please find me another £20,000 when I know that the Welsh Government are not going to take it any further. Yes. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm asking you to reject the second recommendation.
Okay, that's fair enough. Ben, you got your hand up.
Yes, Leader. Sorry, mute wasn't coming off very easily. Yeah, I mean, I note the way that the recommendation's written as well. It sort of should the Welsh Government refuse that the Cabinet be asked, and I think in the context as Councillor King's laid out of how the Welsh Government have refused this and the other schemes, it's very clear that this would be a waste of public money. This isn't on the balance of what the public have said so far, we're not proceeding, let's see what the public say in a future consultation. This is a step change in how they're approaching road building, and it's a sort of a model for 20 years into the future. So I fear that I appreciate the context that the conversation potentially took place in, and I respect all the work that's gone into this wider study. But the very fact in that reference that it sort of talks, it's speaking without seeing the outcome from Welsh Government. We've now got the full facts, and I just don't see how we can commit to spending money on something when there's such a clear indication now of the route forward from Welsh Government. So just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. I totally agree. I remember when the last funding came through to E&R Scrutiny Committee, of which I was a member, and the question I asked was, are we sure this is going to go ahead before we spent this money? And the question was, we didn't know, but we clearly do now. So I agree with you totally. I can't see how we can progress. So yeah, I'm happy to go with that, and I assume everybody else is. So can I have everybody agree? Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. As you say, it's a done deal in some respects now. Okay. The next item is another reference from Shared Regulatory Service Joint Committee of the 23rd of March, and I think Eddie, are you taking this one? As I know you are a member.
Thank you, Leader. This is one of those reports. It comes with a reference, and you know, for us, we've been able to see the reports, and I just commend anybody who's interested in this particular cabinet. That's, you know, some of the work that's gone on by the Shared Regulatory Joint Service is outstanding, and this, what I'm trying to say is, this reference doesn't really give the detail on it. The reports are available for people, you know, members and the public to see. But if I just go through quickly, for example, I'm looking at page 2 on this reference. You know, the report that was given to the committee mentioned about human resources. In particular, it's a challenge for the regulatory services in getting qualified people. The qualified people we have really do really well, and get seconded or poached for other reasons. And there's a shortage of actually qualified staff at the moment. And in the meantime, the head of the service has been utilising some of the options. We utilise graduates from the universities, but last year that was more difficult, obviously because of the COVID situation. But that's now, now that the education is returning, the university returning, then that's we're utilising some graduates for that. And we've also got some apprentices that we've been taken through. And from the report, it's been really useful that the apprentices have really been given value, and you know, they've set themselves on a career trajectory, which has been really useful. To some extent, there's been in the report a financial position. There is a slight overspend on some of the regulated services. Basically, some of it's down to the fact that we haven't been able to go to businesses and get an income in that respect. But it's a small comparison in the overall budget that's been put in there. Performance monitoring in Appendix 2 of the report goes into some detail, and there are flagged reds on there because of the inspection regime. Clearly, you can't match all the possible inspections during the pandemic. So, you know, with the measuring the metrics that we use, clearly we haven't been able to achieve some of those. And also the staff as well have been utilised in other areas like test, trace and protect. So that, you know, it's been a different focus on many of the staff. The service updates, clearly there's been a lot of change in the legislation, and, you know, the enforcement teams are informing businesses on how they do their business, how they respond to those regulations. We have had quite a few bits of enforcement through the joint enforcement teams. That's, you know, linking with the police. That's been quite active over the last year or so, particularly the last 6 months. Licensing policy and enforcement, that's also in a report. And one thing that struck me as well was that in the report talks about the Welsh Government consultation papers on air quality and reducing emissions for domestic burning of solid fuels. And it did strike me as a surprise that a lot of people are going for domestic wood burners, which has taken us back to our air emissions quality back 20 years. So that's something that is going to be hitting the horizon soon. The committee were also apprised of the Welsh Government's white paper, setting up proposals for comprehensive reform of the legislation due to the building safety. You know, the outcome of Grenville has highlighted some issues there. It's an independent review and inquiry brought out some particular proposals, and they're looking to set out in the Building Safety Expert Group's report, Roadmap to Safer Buildings in Wales, and they've got some proposals for a building safety regime which covers all multi-occupied residential buildings, and also even buildings that, you know, houses that have got 2 flats will come under this, and they need to be licensed. It also introduced some categories, and so of buildings, category 1 and 2, depending on the nature of risk, etc. And what the report also highlighted was that there's a conflict of interest between building control services and the actual local, you know, building control. So, you know, we know that we can put planning applications, and it's open market on who actually does building control, which is clearly an issue. And so they're looking to see if the local authority provides building control for all residential buildings, particularly those over 18 metres or more in height. And there's more to that, so there'll be quite a bit coming out on that in the future. But it outlines with that additional regulatory regime. There'll be more regulations, there'll be more enforcement, so that'll obviously need to be resourced in some way. So that's something which we'll probably have to consider later on. What also is the Welsh Government proposing is setting up a joint inspection team to work alongside local authorities to help them enforce against landlords responsible, because you know, we've got expertise in certain areas, but that's something that would need to be set up. Let's see. There's also in the report talks about the UK Government commissioned an independent review of the competition policy, for the purpose of identifying the reforms needed to best position us for prosperity in post-EU exit and post-COVID world. And this review was concluded in February 21, and the reports come out, and it's outlined some changes there. They're listed in this reference now. There was mention in the report of the fees. Clearly, that's a challenge for the fees. They haven't gone up any great amount, 0.5% at the most. It's dependent, as I say, the authorities are managing within the budget they've been given, so we can't just pass that on to. So hopefully, people will accept that as far as fees for that, and you know, there's setting a rate of how much it costs per hour for the officers to be involved in any work that they do. So apart from all that information, I'm hoping that members and the public will look at the report itself. It's far more detailed than what's in this reference, and this report's for noting.
Thank you. Liz, do you want to come in?
Yes, I did, Leader. This is one of those sort of small reports that we get, you know, minutes of a meeting, etc. And I think pre-pandemic, Shared Regulatory Services was, you know, one of those teams where we knew that they did trading standards, we knew that they did environmental health, we knew that they did a lot of stuff that went on in the background and across 3 counties. And then we came into a pandemic, and virtually everything we want to check is, oh, we need to talk to SRS about this, have been phenomenal in terms of the TTP programme, in terms of making, you know, finding out where cases have been occurring, following them up, tracking them back. The reports that we've had off them as a sort of senior leadership team has been phenomenal in their usefulness and the information that they've provided. Personally, if I've got any queries in terms of town centres and how shops are operating, they are the go-to people for advice, making sense out of the legislation that has sometimes been changing on a daily basis, and they are always the people that are keeping ahead of that, but still doing the same job. They're out, you know, they're out, as you said, in the joint enforcement teams alongside the sort of standard council enforcement officers and the police, providing that expertise as well. So just a huge thank you to me, and we have been so well served by them in the last year.
Yeah, I would echo that. Eddie, do you want to come back?
Yes, you're right, and often a lot of the stuff is in the report. There's an appendix there, Appendix 3, which puts it on a page some of the activities, and it's really interesting, and in that respect. And what I meant to mention as well that in the report was that there has been continued enforcement and prosecutions, and in the Appendix 4. There's been some really interesting ones, things like scams and things like people selling, fraud, fake products and things like that. And more recently, we've had problems with an individual that's not looked after the welfare of animals. And recently, since the report's been written, the individual's been prosecuted and has gone to prison for it. So, that's the sort of work that goes on by the team. And hopefully more information will come out on that in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. No, I should declare an interest. I was a trading standards officer, I guess, but in the dim and distant past. But you're absolutely right. And the thing that struck me, one of the things that came out of it was again the white paper that you were talking about in relation to the building safety regime. That's an important factor. And to be fair, the other thing it talks about is actually making sure that category 1s are using our building control, which is, I think, absolutely superb. I think it's right, because I've often wondered how a developer can have their own building control expert to tell us they've done it right, when we just, all right, they're experts too. But when it's as important as this, then I think that's the right way forward. So I'm hoping that the white paper will go forward. Anyway, thank you for that comprehensive response to a simple, as it looks, minute. But as you say, one hell of a lot of work goes on in the background. And one of the things, and it's not surprising that maybe some of the income's down, because they've been doing so many other things that they're being required to do just on top of the normal workload. So that, it's not a surprise. So, right, thank you for that. So I take it we will simply note it, but I guess we could say that we thank all the officers involved in SRS, etc., for the tremendous amount of work they do. So perhaps we should minute that too. Yes? Yeah, good. Okay. Then we'll go on to the next item, which is a report from myself in relation to a backup replacement system for ICT. Basically, this is a simple enough report in some respects. The report is to gain approval to undertake the procurement process on the Crown Commercial Services Framework for the replacement of the Council's ageing, and it is ageing, on-premises backup infrastructure, including the addition of a backup and recovery solution for off-premises data, which we currently use as Office 365. As you probably know, we do require backup systems, and we have two of them at the moment. One is in the Alps, one is in the civic offices. But it is important that we have a new system, because it will safeguard the critical aspects of our work. It will enhance lots of things, and they're listed within the executive summary. Hopefully, it will also be cheaper. And obviously it might be even easier to use through lowering and simplifying the administrative time. As I said, we currently have one in the Civic and the Alps. It needs to be replaced. We do require additional capacity and constant IT intervention with the current system. And anyway, the hardware is nearly at its end of life. So it seriously does need to be replaced. And the other thing, of course, is recently, because of the pandemic, we've upped our game in terms of IT, and the introduction of Office 365 throughout the council has generated additional needs to be able to have more backup. So I think this is just a straightforward, sensible approach. And if anybody wants a full explanation of the project, and they can find that and the business case at Appendix A. So I think it's basically a no-brainer thing in terms of what we have to do. We have a system, It's getting old. We have to replace it, and we're looking to go out to procurement. So the recommendations simply are the delegated authority is granted to the head of finance in consultation with the managing director and the leader to award the tender to the winning supplier. That delegated authority is granted to the head of legal services in consultation with the head of finance to execute the contract with a successful tenderer for the provision of a backware hardware and software. And the new contract is awarded on the most economic advantageous terms to the council based on 70% cost and 30% quality. As I say, we have a system, it does work, but we really do need to make sure that we're fit for the 21st or even the 22nd century. Liz, you've got your hand up.
No, it was to support and to formally second, Leader.
Okay. As I say, no issues. Everybody agreed? Good. The next two items are basically in what I would call housekeeping reports more than anything else. The first one is to seek approval and comments in respect of the progress update for the quarter January to March 2021 in terms of our Cabinet work programme. And the second item is to seek Cabinet approval of an updated Cabinet quarterly forward work programme from April to June 2021. As I said, in some respects, it's housekeeping. This gives us a plan that we know that will go forward. Obviously, other things which could come into the quarterly programme too. If you see, most of the issues have been dealt with. Some of those that have been delayed really because of the pandemic, if you think about it, one of which is things like the Barry Town Centre Gateway, and that's been deferred until April. So hopefully we will be getting that sometime later this month. There's also one in terms of carer strategy, which we hope to go forward, but clearly that's been an issue that we cannot address, and it's in both Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, so it will be coming forward as soon as possible. I have got one comment in relation to Appendix 1 on page 8, and that is, it says, and perhaps somebody will remind me if I'm wrong, it talks about fees and charges. As far as I'm aware, we've agreed the fees and charges with the exception of the street licenses, cafe street licenses. So it does say, so maybe just slightly needs to be amended if I can find it, and I can't. It says the report is delayed while further consultation takes place. Well, I think if I recall, we agreed the fees and with the exception of that particular area. If I'm wrong, somebody please tell me. I think that was the situation. Otherwise,
that was my understanding, Leader.
Sorry?
That was my understanding.
Good, that's mine too. So very simply, as I said, housekeeping, it's a report which we've all had access to, and we know which reports are coming forward as of right. So one recommendation that the Cabinet Quarterly Work Programme for January to March 2021 at Appendix 1 be agreed, that the Cabinet Work Programme April to June 21 attached at Appendix 2 be endorsed. So straightforward, we know what's coming, but clearly there will be other things coming in as and when necessary, but these are definitive. Yep.
And formally second, Leader.
Thank you. All right, everybody agree, I think. Following on to the next item, again, it is similar housekeeping. It is the Cabinet Annual Strategic Work Forward Programme for 21 to April 22, and basically is for us to agree the Cabinet to approve the annual statutory work programme for strategic work programme, I should say, for the 12-month period May 21 to September 2022. It is listed before you. It does tell you whether or not things are going to scrutiny, tells you whether things are going to council. It is, as I said, a forward work programme, and they're unclear. There will be other things that will be added during the course of the year, but these are the ones we currently know about and will be working towards. So very simply, again, the recommendation is that Cabinet approve the annual strategy work programme for the period May 21 to 22, that the work programme for May 2021 to April 2022 be published on the Council's website. As I said, housekeeping more than anything else, but something we have to deal with. So I'm going to move that. If everybody agrees.
Now formally second.
Good. Thank you. And we move forward. And next item is item 9 of Learning and Culture. It's proposal to increase the capacity of Ysgol Derry to meet the future demands for special education in the Vale Glamorgan. And I think Liz, Cabinet Member for Education and Regeneration, will be taking this one.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is coming back to us again. Cabinet will recall that we earlier undertook a formal consultation on the proposal to increase the capacity of Ysgol Derry to meet the future demand for special education in the Vale of Glamorgan. And following that, on 8th of February, Cabinet considered the feedback submitted during the consultation period, which was said was to increase the size of it to accommodate an additional 150 pupils and construct a new school building on the preferred site located in Cosmeston, Penarth, for September 2023, which will operate as an additional site under the management of Ysgol Derry. So at that meeting on the 8th of February, Cabinet determined to progress the proposal through the publication of a statutory notice, as we go through regularly, a sort of a multi-stage approach. That was published on the 25th of November last year in accordance with the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013, in which any person could object to the proposal within 28 days from the publication of the statutory notice. The Council, during the publication of statutory notice, received 2 objections by the end of the 28-day objection period. And those objections have been summarised and responded to in the objection report for Cabinet as part of the decision-making process. As you will see, we have 5 appendices that are in front of us. Appendix A is the original consultation document. Appendix D was the consultation response report. Then we had the statutory notice proposal. Appendix D is the objection report, which I've mentioned. And Appendix E is the equality impact assessment. And I'm aware that everybody has had an opportunity over the last week to read all of those if they hadn't done before. So is everybody happy on that? So for us, the decision is now required on whether or not we go forward to implement the proposal to increase the capacity of Ysgol Derry. The recommendations that are before us today are: 1, that Cabinet considers this report, the consultation document, consultation report, statutory notice, formal objections and objection report, as I've just laid out. 2, that Cabinet approves implementation of the proposal to make regulated alterations under section 2.3 of the School Organisation Code 2018, and that's by firstly increasing the capacity of Ysgol Derry to accommodate an additional 150 pupils and constructing a new school building on the preferred site located in Cosmeston, Penarth, for September 2023, which would operate as an additional site under the management of Ysgol Derry. And finally, that Cabinet notes that the major investment towards a new school building set out in the proposal is subject to the necessary funding being approved by Welsh Government. And I would therefore move.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've read the report comprehensively, as I say, and I think the 2 objections which are covered in Appendix D are adequately covered. Is something which we've hoped to be able to do, because clearly we need the extra capacity. I'm happy to go forward with it. Ben, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I just think, as Liz highlighted, the feedback was also positive. You know, there's been a positive engagement with the public, and I think we've all watched the documentary about Oscar Derry and seen the great work they do, and at least, you know, reflecting on things like COVID and thinking about those vulnerable members of society and what we do to help and support them, expanding this provision. I've read through all the report and all the impact assessments, and I honestly have no problem in supporting this way forwards. I think it's going to be a great addition to an outstanding organisation, and the reasons are laid out as to why it couldn't be further away from Oscar Derry's core site to work in the same context. And as we've seen with the extra units and areas that education are putting into play, we continue to expand all education needs for additional learning needs as well. So this isn't the end of any consideration for future needs, but it's a fantastic school and setup, and I think that this extra site's going to be brilliant. And I really enjoyed reading. It sounds really geeky, doesn't it? I really enjoyed reading the report and seeing positive responses. I think is enlightening to how it's perceived in the public as well. So yeah, happy to support.
Yep, totally agree. Liz, do you want to come back?
Yes, Leader, if I could. Thank you for that, Ben. And I think I keep repeating it, but for every child that we celebrate with sort of 10 A stars or whatever, we celebrate the progress of every single child in the Vale. And for that, we ensure that we provide them with the best possible opportunities and facilities in order to succeed. And, oh, damn.
I thought it was going to be me.
It's I'm getting plagued by
It always happens. This is the fun, isn't it, of working at home? Because I've been expecting the doorbell to ring any minute, and it hasn't yet. But I'm sure if we keep on going for a little longer, it will.
Yeah, and my children are in school, so they can't like interlope and alleviate the situation.
I like everybody else, I'm in no position to throw stones.
Okay, look, I don't know how long Liz is going to
fear
be.
her.
I think we've lost Liz anyway, so we'll continue. But there's been a proposal that that we agree with the recommendations.
I'll formally second it if Liz isn't in the room anymore to
okay, well,
formally count.
I'll formally move them. You can formally second them. We all agreed. Yes.
Yeah, all agreed.
I come back.
It's okay. We just formally agreed them. So we lost you on the one. So I'm going to go back to the next item, which is any other items that I've decided are urgent under part 1. There are none, and there are none under part 2. So everybody can take their telephone calls now, and I'm going to now end the, or go to the door. I'm going to end this meeting, and thank you all for your attendance. It's always going to happen, so don't worry about it. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you, Leader.